And welcome back, folks, for another edition of the Michigan Basketball Insider. Always a pleasure when we can sit with a guy who I consider basketball royalty, but above that, I just consider he's my friend. This is my guy. I just like sitting down talking ball with my man Tim McCormick. Of course, he was an All-American. He was one of the all-time greats in the high school basketball scene here in the state of Michigan. Becomes a first-round draft pick at the University of Michigan, and then plays, a decade in the NBA. Becomes an outstanding commentator, both college and pro. You hear him on the broadcast for the Detroit Pistons. Of course, you hear him right here on the Michigan Basketball Insider. Timmy Mack, how you doing?
I'm well. I'm doing really well. It's funny because I was broadcasting the pregame, postgame, halftime for the Pistons against the Bulls, and one of the fans yelled, "Hey, Timmy Mack, go blue!" And I thought he must be listening to the podcast because you're the only one that calls me Timmy Mack.
Absolutely.
It's catching on.
It is catching on, Tim. I got to tell you, it's I said before we came on some of the questions about the team, especially as it relates to this lineup and the way they're trying to play and some of the lineups that they're trying to use. A lot of people talking about them and how they're using different guys, but I feel like you're because of your experience and your position. I feel like, man, Tim, you're like the only guy qualified to really talk about how these guys how they play and some of their struggles that they're having. But I'm also curious about your perspective. Because you had some great perspective on Nmari Burnett going to practice, and you said he was the best guy in practice. Well, he's been the best guy in games. That translated. You went to the TCU game recently, so I'm curious. Just being at the game, what were some of your observations being there for that?
Well, I love my seat, Sam. It was a good angle to see the court, but the thing that I really liked is I had a great angle to watch the bench and to watch the assistant coaches and to watch Dusty May and how he interacted with players. And I thought it was fascinating. I walked away with a little bit of a different perspective. Let me take you back in time. When I was playing for the New York Knicks, Pat Riley was always he would grind on game film and video. I mean, you might play back-to-back games and the next morning watch video for an hour. And I remember one game in particular. We played the Pistons at Madison Square Garden, and the next morning we went into our film session. And Pat Riley, he's an accountability guy. If you messed up, he showed the clips, and he would get a little bit mad, and you would get exposed. But in this particular game, Patrick Ewing played like 40 minutes, and I didn't play a lot, so I just thought I didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to be good. But in this particular game, he had one of his camera guys focus solely on the bench the whole game. And the reason he did that, the video started, and he started chewing out guys for bad body language on the bench, sitting with your friends rather than get to know other guys. Xavier McDaniel with a dunk and nobody jumped up and cheered. And he spent the entire hour going over the bench guys on the bench, their performance and how it had to get better. So ever since then, I've been acutely aware of how important it is for players to have enthusiasm. It shows a lot about your culture, the DNA of what you're trying to become. And I just thought that Will Cheddar and Sam Walters were phenomenal. Jace Howard is always good. But the rest of the guys, they start these defense cheers and they jump up on dunks and they mimic what just happened, the tough shot that it was really fun to watch. And it showed me that this is a happy team. Like when you're 11 deep, not everybody's going to play as much. And you're usually watching your minutes controlled by how somebody does. Like if I'm Nmari Burnett's backup and he nails 3 straight threes, I'm not going to play as much. And it's easy to mope and complain and whine. I didn't see any of that. Everybody was super enthused. And then also I love the interaction between the coaches. These guys, they were ball players themselves, and they totally get it. They were hyping guys up. They were teaching, and Dusty May has got just a brilliant disposition. And I kept thinking that Winters Grady and Oscar Goodman and Trey McKinney, the reason they're coming there, part of it is that on their visits, when they watch tape, when they watch film, they watch the coach. And young guys say do not want to get yelled at and screamed at and embarrassed in front of their family and their friends. Dusty May has got a really good way of interacting with players. And so, yeah, I liked a lot about the TCU game, but that was an interesting perspective to me. And I learned a lot about the culture of this team.
Yeah, a lot of fun, a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of we're playing for the guy next to us.
Mm-hmm.
You can see the camaraderie is real already, but high on accountability. I think I said this before. You're on that floor, you're gonna play some defense.
Yeah.
You're gonna be running the whole time. You better be playing with energy and effort the whole time. And just because Dusty's a player's coach. Like you get that from him right away. But there's an accountability to it. And you saw that in the Miami game, Tim, because these guys, they get out there, and we're gonna get into this in today's show. Turnovers again. I mean, they're throwing it to the other team a lot. This is the third show. And again, we're going to be talking about turnovers. They come out the gate and they turn it over 4 times in the first few minutes, and he subs the whole starting lineup. It was like a line change in hockey, right? He sits them all down because it's like, hey, what are we doing? Everybody out, right? I'm a player's coach, but everybody's out. Everybody's sitting down. So I'm a player's coach, but there's an accountability to this too.
There is, Sam, and I spent a lot of the Miami game watching and trying to figure out why are they careless. These guys are highly skilled. They've got good ball handlers, and I came away. I'm not sure if this is right, but I wanted to throw it out to you and get your opinion. So in today's AAU basketball, most players are the man, definitely on their high school teams, but you give them the ball and get out of the way and they make plays. But as I look through Michigan's roster, I think that most of their players have a simple role of being the guy, and they're not used to having other people that they have to set up. As an example, Roddy Gale in high school, when he was on the AAU circuit, he's just a playmaker. He gets the ball and he goes and creates, and it's so important. And when I look at guys for the NBA, I think especially for rookies, it's a great skill set if they're not the man, if they're off the ball, if they're learning how to cut to get open. I remember I had a conversation with Bill Russell. Look at me name dropping. When I talked to Bill Russell, he was talking about the importance of teamwork. And he said something so simple. He said, there are 10 guys on the court. And when you're on the court, that means that you only have the ball 10% of the time. 90% of the guys are running around without the ball. And so he said it's so important that guys understand that when they do have the privilege of holding the ball, that they've got to be able to make good passes. And John Beilein was a master at this. You know who else was Bo Ryan at Wisconsin? I remember broadcasting one of their games, and I showed up for practice, and they spent like the first 40 minutes doing the most elementary, fundamental dribbling drills, the way you pivot, the way you cross over, like stuff that a fourth grader, a fifth grader would have to learn. John Beilein did some of that stuff too. He always emphasized when you throw a pass, target the outside hand as far away from the defense as possible. It seems like the Michigan players don't know a lot of that stuff. And I just wonder if Dusty May's in a position where he's saying, gosh, we need to go back to some elementary drills to help these guys, because some of the passes you just watch and you think, what are you doing? Well, I don't think that they learned it as kids.
Yeah, a couple of things, a lot to unpack there. I think you're part of this is guys getting used to playing with one another. I think we got to build that into the equation. Guys get used to playing um, new roles, and guys getting used to doing things that they didn't have to do before. Because normally on all these teams, and you made this point before, when I get the ball, I'm going to score, and that's it. I'm not trying to create. I am trying to score. Now you're asking these guys to, yeah, you might be scoring, but yes, you might also be creating for others. Now, whether they can do that is another question. Are they capable of creating for others off the bounce? There's a debate that's kind of raging on about capability there. Like, for instance, when I talked to my guy Daniel Horton, he's kind of iffy on, hey, is that something that the guys on this squad, as we look at them at this point, do you have guys on this squad other than maybe Trey that can really do that? Are you
Wow.
asking guys to do something that they really can do, even with more reps, even with more time with one another? Dusty and staff say, yes, we think with more time they're going to be able to do it. Time will tell, right? But
Yeah.
I throw that question to you, Tim. You know, I say, let's lean on what the coaches are betting on and banking on, that with time on task that these guys are going to be able to do it, because you see in the second half the turnovers come way down.
That's a good point. So let me walk through some of the guys on the team. Vlad Goldin. This competition level is so much higher than what he's used to. I know they played occasionally against good teams, but he was the man and got the ball a lot and got reps and got comfortable with his role. Nmari Burnett last year, he was playing on the ball a lot. He's definitely better off the ball. Tre Donaldson was not the man at Auburn. Like, he shared the job. This is his team. Danny Wolf told me, I think I shared this last week, that when he was at Yale, he never left the paint. They sent him down to the low post. Now all of a sudden he's like a kid on the weekend. He's dribbling around and making passes, and he's trying to be Kevin Garnett. Like, that's new for him as well. What about Reuben Jones? I like Reuben Jones. If you were to watch North Texas last year, they are one of the slowest teams in America. They walk the ball up the court. When you're playing in transition, your whole system is going faster. Your mind is going faster. And it does take time before you can slow it down and make the appropriate passes.
Yeah, and that's the other piece that I didn't mention that is a very apt point. And you're adding pace to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
You're putting guys in different roles. You're asking them to kind of stretch as far as their skill set is concerned. Capabilities that some people question, do they really have? Oh, and now do it fast. Like, that's tough. It might take some time to adjust to it, and we'll see. We'll see if they're able to do it with time. I think you have to draw some encouragement from the fact that in the second half of these games, the turnovers do come way, way down.
Yeah.
So they're able to calm it down.
So Sam, last year, we talked a little bit about the Pistons and Monty Williams, and his system was, he called it 0.5 seconds. And when you catch the ball, you've got half of a second to be able to make a play. You either shoot it, you dribble it, or you get rid of it. And the team struggled so much. First of all, they were young, but the other thing is, the guys, they catch the ball and they want to look around and see what's out there before they make their play. Sometimes, and there are some players that could thrive in that system. I wasn't one of them. I think it's a system that promotes too many turnovers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess some of the passes that you might see, a guy tries to get it up court in transition and he might throw it away. I guess the turnovers that come from that kind of come from aggression, I can maybe excuse a little more than the ones that come from carelessness.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And Danny Wolf tried to throw there was like a backdoor cut, and he tried to go at it. And they had maybe a few turnovers leading into that. And you could say, hey, well, be a little more conservative in that moment, because you just had a few turnovers. So maybe dial it back a little bit. I guess I'm a little more okay with that, because you're trying to be aggressive there. Maybe as you get a little more into your teammates and they're expecting that pass, they're gonna catch it. I'm a little more okay with that one than just being loose with the basketball and careless with the dribble. That one I'm better with. So 6 and 1/2 dozen the other. If they can be less careless with the basketball, the turnovers that come from aggression. If I'm a coach, I'm gonna say, okay, you guys, those aggressive passes, your teammates. There was a pocket pass that he tried to throw off a pick and roll. Teammates get more familiar with one another. They're gonna catch it. They're gonna expect. They're gonna know Danny's gonna he can make that pass. I'm gonna be expecting that to come, off a screen. So those are going to come with familiarity with
Yeah.
one another. But
Yeah.
some of the other ones that frustrate coaches, those are the ones that I think they got to tighten up right now. Don't be careless with the basketball. If they can cut those down in the first half of games right now, I think coaches would not beat their head against the wall so much.
Yeah. I also think that when you are 11 deep, and this team is seriously 11 deep, and I don't think they can play 11 once they get into the Big Ten. As a matter of fact, 8 of the 11 guys in the rotation are shooting over 50% from the field. I don't know if I've ever seen that before. But the point is that when there's 11 guys out there, you're not playing a ton of minutes. And when you're out there, you want to try to make a play to impress the coach and to secure more minutes. And so that might be a reason. There's a lot of reasons, but you're right. It's got to stop.
Well, and you said, and this is the last point on this, the familiarity with one another. Hey, this is a pass he can throw. I got to be expecting this pass. I mean, rotations aren't really set right now. They've stretched the lineup so much that how often are guys really playing with one another? Vlad and Danny Wolf, for instance, and all this, this 4 or 5 pick and roll stuff they're trying to do and getting that mesh together. I mean, as long as the lineup is stretched like they are, getting the chemistry together, you wonder how long that's going to take. How long are they going to play with this stretched lineup while they're trying to find some things? You got to wonder. That's a question to ask too.
Yeah. When I was watching the Miami game, there were a couple passes that Danny Wolf threw, and I thought Jared Goff is watching this saying, that's too tough. You can't make that pass. I can't make that pass. And then the other thing that you just brought up, this is all audition time. Yeah. And the coaches are watching very close. In a lot of ways, I think that Michigan's best lineup is Danny Wolf at center, and you go with your 4 guards. Those guards, Roddy Gale, Nmari Burnett, Reuben Jones, they're all 6'5", and they're pretty strong. You could play that big lineup out there with Danny Wolf. That's you're going to see that. You will see that from time to time.
So what do you think about this? I want to see them kind of let Trey cook a little more on offense. I want to see them with more Trey with the ball in his hands and some pick and roll action. I just think that he could be more of an offensive focal point for them. He is the one guy to me when you talk about creating off the bounce. He's the guy. When I look at them offensively, I want to see more of it. And so you give him a ball screen, I definitely feel like there's some more possibilities there. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah. So we're on the same page, Sam. And By the way, I want to bring up our little discussion where I made the prediction that 9 different people will lead the team in scoring at some point in the year. Nmari Burnett's led the team twice. Roddy Gale, I'm sorry, yeah, Gale's once, and then Danny Wolf is once. So they're off to a pretty good start with that stat. Probably too early to say this. Anxious to hear what you think. Trey Donaldson's Michigan's best player. I'm immensely impressed with his skills on the ball and off the ball. He's really good in transition. He's shooting excellent from 3. His defense much better than I expect. I mean, I didn't pay close attention last year watching him play, but he's a solid defender. He plays with great enthusiasm and speed. Clearly, his teammates like him. I think his coach trusts him. From what I've seen so far, he's their best player. Agree or disagree?
You know what? It's some people are going to disagree with the take because he's not the leading scorer. But when you consider that he's the catalyst, he's the spoon, he's the setup man, he plays both ways. He can play on the ball and off the ball. I agree with that. I agree with that. That yeah, he's the spoon that stirs the coffee, and I do want to see them put him in more position scoring the basketball too, because I think that's part of making them even more potent offensively. But I also want to give you credit and go back to a point that you made earlier from one of your practice observations, because a guy who a lot of others are pointing to as the best player on the team is Nmari Burnett. And this points back to what I said earlier. You went to practice and you said in our first show, you said, Sam, hey, the best player I saw in practice is Nmari Burnett. And this is when no one was talking about the holdovers. No one was talking about Nmari. And you said, I'm watching practice and he's shooting the basketball really well. You know, he's playing really well and he's rebounding and he's doing all these things. And we were talking about the role definition being so much better. You're not asking him to do something that's outside of his comfort zone. They were playing him on the ball out of necessity, but you take him off the ball much more in his comfort zone, right? And you're not stressing him to the degree that he was stressed last year. And wow, look at him blossoming. And so he's shooting it extremely well. He's defending really well. You're seeing him finish. He's getting out on the break. He's finishing with authority. You're seeing him play to the level of his recruiting ranking even. So Nmari Burnett, Tim McCormick, is looking like he looked in practice when you went out to see him.
Yeah, and I also like the fact that as a returning player, that he has improved. Kudos to Juwan, and you'd have to say Will Cheddar's improved, maybe even more. But those guys are taking ownership of this team, and the fact that they've been here, they've been through the Big Ten. There's going to be a lot of wide-eyed players when they go to West Lafayette or Assembly Hall or the Kohl Center. They haven't been there, but Nmari Burnett and Will Cheddar have, and I think that they are really taking a leadership role with this team. And then also the other thing that I noticed from Nmari Burnett is he's no nonsense. He really has a professional approach to this thing. He had a great summer of conditioning because he's in wonderful shape. And I just think as time goes on, it's going to be really hard for 11 guys to play. With that being said, Sam, Justin Pippen, we can talk a little bit about him. And then Fat Brooks, like one of those guys probably is not going to be in the rotation this year.
Yeah, they're gonna have to cut it down for sure. I wanna co-sign what you said about Trey. I do think that he is their best player. And I think right now your two best players are those guys are Trey and Nmari. And you give me some 2-man game with Nmari on this in the corner. I mean that's a potent deal. Now, originally though, I would say the 2-man game would be Trey and Vlad. And what are you gonna do? Because now I can kick to Nmari out there. that is a really good offensive setup. But maybe Vlad isn't that guy.
Yeah.
Maybe it's Danny Wolf, like you said, Tim. You wouldn't have thought that heading into the season, which gets back to what I said at the beginning of the show, because we had these expectations of Vlad Goldin heading into the season, and it's still very early, and those expectations could still be met, right? No one's writing him off, but everyone is asking, well, did we did were we off base with what we thought he was? Is it a matter of guys not knowing how to play with him? Or is he just struggling? Because what we've seen, Tim, is even when he's gotten the basketball, he's had some issues finishing. So you as a big guy yourself, what do you see? Because we spent last week talking about, well, hey, they don't know how to feed him and he needs to demand the basketball. Well, what about when he gets it? Yeah, we've seen a couple of finishes, but we've also seen some times where even when he got it, he wasn't able to do his thing. So what do you see with that?
Yeah, he's a better player than we've seen so far. I am completely convinced of that. In practices, he dunks everything and actually missed a couple of dunks earlier in the week. Maybe it's more important that we change our expectations of him. He has not scored in double figures, but that's okay because he's not getting the ball as the focal point of the offense. As a matter of fact, I think Trey Donaldson is Michigan's only player that's been in double figures all 4 games. So if Vlad Goldin gets you 8 points and 4 rebounds, is that a bad game? That might be what they need. Not everybody's not going to score double figures for this team. There's not enough shots to go around. But I do think at some point he's going to have a breakout game. He's going to get you 17 points and 10 rebounds, and you're going to say, I want more of that. But it's not going to be that way. There are going to be games that Reuben Jones doesn't do much, that Roddy Gale, gets you 6, 7, 8 points, but somebody else is going to pick things up. I still believe that Vlad Goldin is a good player, and everybody's going to get a lot better trying to feed him the ball. I like the idea of starting the game out and force feed him 2 or 3 trips down the court, try to get a dunk, try to get a post move, and build his confidence up.
Gotcha. All right. So let's talk about some of the other guys because, Sam Walters, you feel like he is a sniper.
Whew.
An absolute sharp shooting sniper.
Yeah.
All right. So how do you see his role developing? Is that it? Or do you see there being more to what he can provide? And then Justin Pippen, we've started to see him be inserted into the lineup the last couple of games. Do you think that's just a one-off as they have this expanded lineup? Or do you think he's going to be a fixture in the lineup as we go on into the season?
All right. So first of all, with Sam Walters, this kid is a beautiful shooter. Like he shoots a straight ball and it's very repeatable. The thing that surprised me about him is that he did some really good things on the defensive end that I didn't expect. He's got good length. He's not super athletic, but it doesn't seem to bother him on the defensive end. There was a lineup in which Vlad and Danny and Sam all play together. I mean, that's old school NBA where you're going 7 foot, 7 foot, 6'10". There's going to be some teams where I think they're going to try to do that more often. Big fan of Sam Walters, and I love his enthusiasm, the way he carries himself, the way he encourages teammates. He's pretty darn impressive, and I love the fact that he's just going to get better and better because I think he has 2 years left. In terms of Justin Pippen, I remember before one of the Michigan games, I had a chance to talk to Scottie Pippen at length about his son. How do you like that, Sam? I've dropped Bill Russell and Scottie Pippen into the conversation as a major name dropper. Scottie told me that once Justin has his surgery and he'll get freed up physically, he said, you're going to see a super athletic, really smart player that's going to get better and better. And he said, I was a late bloomer, and I didn't reach my peak until I was like a senior in college. And he said Justin's gonna be the same way. He's a slow developer. He's really smart, and I think that right now he's being a little bit cautious. Maybe it's because he just came off surgery. Maybe he's just a thoughtful kid that doesn't want to come in and force the action. In 21 minutes, he's only taken one shot. And so he hasn't really shown what he can do on the offensive end. And trust me, that's not a bad thing to have a thoughtful kid that wants to do the right things. Like some kids just come in and just jack up shots and it's all about them. He's not that guy, and he's going to be really good. So I'm not saying that's a negative that he's only got one shot in 21 minutes, but I like what I've seen from him. He's very fundamentally sound, and he plays very good defense. There's going to be some times when you're playing a hot score that Reuben Jones maybe gets a couple fouls. Justin Pippen can go in there and carry on the defensive end for a while.
Gotcha. All right. So Tim, early Big Ten. I mean, what are we? 5 games in. You know, any guys, any stats, any teams kind of jumping out at you early games in the Big Ten?
Yeah, I've got to be honest with you. I looked at some stats, and I thought it was pretty cool that this shows how much balance Michigan has. That Trey Donaldson's the only player from Michigan in the top 40 in Big Ten scoring. Also, Michigan is second in the Big Ten, I think, to Indiana or Purdue in 3-point shooting. We kind of thought that might be the case. Michigan much further ahead on the offensive end than on the defensive end, I think. But the defense is better than I expected it to be, so that's good. And I don't know about you, but I'm still not in full college basketball mode. I've watched all of Michigan's games. I watched some of Michigan State. I saw the Champions Classic with Duke and Kansas, but I have not seen Virginia Tech yet. Like I haven't gone that deep into it.
Yeah, I've only looked at I've looked at is their schedule. I know that they played Penn State and lost. I saw that, and then I looked today just to see who they played after Penn State, and I saw they lost to Jacksonville.
That's not good. So I think Virginia Tech is a good victory. Michigan will play everybody. Everybody will feel good. They'll have some minutes. They'll get some buckets. Things get real against Wisconsin, and they've got a kid, John Tanji, who had 41 against Arizona. Not only that, they blew out Arizona. And so Wisconsin's going to be pretty darn good. And that'll be the big early test. We'll know a lot more about this team after that game.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. I found myself watching, like you go and you watch a little basketball here and there. I'm not fully in college basketball mode either, but you turn it on and you watch Kansas, Michigan State, and you're like, okay, you're watching Hunter, you're looking around, you're looking at the teams, and then you said, is that AJ Storr?
Yeah.
Is that AJ Storr?
Yeah, we saw him in the Big Ten last, right?
Like, what? It's like he's playing for Kansas now.
Yeah,
you gotta be kidding me.
So here's a thought. When you just mentioned Michigan State, I always think that Michigan State's biggest problem is in today's game they play two really big guys together, and it clogs up their lane, and the game's not free flowing. That's something to watch with Michigan State struggling. They have not shot the ball well yet. I think that's something to watch with Wolf and Vlad Goldin together. Can you play two really big guys in the same game?
Yeah, it shall be interesting to see. Yeah, AJ Storr left Wisconsin playing at Kansas now. So that's how college basketball is these days, right, guys? Just jump around. But yeah, we are loving the start of the Dusty May era, even if you're seeing them throw it to the other team a little bit. more than we like, you see him going to halftime, and they figure some things out. Whatever he's saying to him at halftime, he's pushing some buttons, and they come out and they look different. That's a sign of a good coach making some good halftime.
You know what the key is? You've got kids, Sam. So if they ever played soccer, like at halftime, what do they do of the soccer game? They give the kids an orange, right? They cut it in fours. That's the key. You've got to have like a soccer approach and give the Michigan players give them orange slices at halftime. That'll help them.
Well, whatever he's doing, it's working. Orange slices, I don't know, celery and peanut butter, something.
Yeah,
you got doing that, Dusty. Hey, just give it to him at the beginning of the game now.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I like that.
Whatever you do it at halftime. At any rate, folks, it is always a pleasure. And when you see Tim at these Pistons games, say, "Hey, Timmy Matt." Next time you see him, Timmy Matt.
I always answer. I answer, Sam.
That way you know you're watching. That way we know you're watching. And so we're looking forward to seeing you again on the next edition of the Michigan Basketball Insider.